this video we are going to be looking at equivalent fractions. So what are equivalent fractions? Well, they are fractions that have the same value but are shown in different ways. It uses different numbers and also looks different when it's drawn, but it always has the same value, and that's really important to remember. So as you can see here, I've got two fractions. They are written differently. They have different numerators and different denominators. So this fraction is showing a half and this fraction is showing 2/4. However, you can see when you look at these images, the amount that has been shaded is the same, but they are shown in different ways. Okay, let's have a look at some examples then. So here we have equivalent fractions. They're all equivalent, even though they have different numerators and different denominators. So let's have a look. Here we've got 1/4. I have 4 parts, which is shown in my denominator. 1 part is shaded, which my numerator shows. Here I've got 2/8, so I've got 2 shaded out of 8 in total. So 2/8 is equivalent to 1/4. And if you look down the rows here, you can see the amount shaded is the same. They are shown in different ways. So remember I said at the beginning they have the same value, but they are shown in different ways. Here I have 3/12, which is equivalent to 1/4 or 2/8. And I have 4/16, which is also equivalent. Here I have some more examples, but this time I'm going to work out which fractions are equivalent to one another. So looking at this first representation, I've got 3 parts all together, so I know my denominator, which tells me how many parts are all together, is going to be 3. There is 1 part shaded here, so that's going to be 1. So the fraction for this first one is 1/3. Okay, let's find out what's equivalent to 1/3. Well, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My denominator is going to be 6 parts. I can see I've got 2 shaded, so 2/6. I can see that 2/6 is equivalent to, it has the same value as 1/3. And finally, looking at the last one, I can see I've got 9 parts in total and 3 shaded. So 3/9 is also equivalent to 1/3. It's also equivalent to 2/6. You can see they are showing the same amount, they have the same value, but they are shown in these different ways. Okay, I wonder if you can have a go now at identifying the fractions that are equivalent to 1/5. You may want to pause the video now and have a go. Let's see what you got then. So, nice simple start. I've got 1 shaded and I've got 5 parts in total. So I've got 1/5. Fractions equivalent to 1/5. Let's have a look. 10 parts in total, 2 are shaded. So the fraction is going to be 2/10. So 2/10 is equivalent to 1/5, and we can see that in this diagram here. And finally, let's count the last one. Oh, I've got 15 parts altogether, and we call those 15ths. 3 of them are shaded, so 3/15 is equivalent to 2/10 and 1/5. Okay, let's have a look at some more examples then. So here, my question asks, which group shows an equivalent fraction to 3/4? So here, I've got 3/4, 3 are shaded out of 4 in total. Is it 6/8 or is it 5/8? Now you may be able to see this just by looking at the two images, but if I wanted to work it out, I would first of all have to calculate 1/4 before I could calculate 3/4, and that would tell me fractions equivalent to 3/4. So if I start counting these blocks here, I can see I've got 8. Now if I'm going to work out how many quarters go into 8, I need to divide it by the denominator, which is 4. So there are 2 groups of 4s in 8, but I don't want 1/4, I want 3/4. So as you can see here, I've done 8 divided by 4 is 2, and then 2 multiplied by 3, the numerator, because I want 3/4. So that is 6. So 3/4 of 8 is 6. Okay, so I know that 6/8 is equivalent to 3/4. Okay, moving on then, we're going to be looking now at how to calculate an equivalent fraction. So, to calculate equivalent fractions, you must multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number, and that's really important to remember. Okay, so I'm going to take you through some examples and then I'm going to give you some for you to try. So I'm looking for 3 fractions that are equivalent to 2/5. Now, remember I've just said I'm going to times the numerator and the denominator by the same number, okay? So looking at this one, if I was going to have my multiplier as 2 to make my new fraction, so 5 times 2 is 10. So my new denominator would be 10. Now whatever I've done to the bottom here, I've got to do to the top. So 2, my multiplier is 2, times 2, which is 4. So 2/5 is equivalent to 4/10. Let's try another one. 2/5, my multiplier now is 4. So 5 multiplied by 4 is 20. And I've got to do the same to the numerator as I've done to the denominator. 2 times 4 is 8. So 8/20 are also equivalent to 2/5. And finally, let's try my multiplier as 10. 5 times 10 is 50. And 2, I'm going to times it by 10 as well. 2 times 10 is 20. So 20/50 are the same as 2/5. And remember, I've put it down here, you can multiply by any number, but the really important thing that you need to remember is you've got to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number when you're trying to find equivalent fractions. Okay. Here then, I want you to have a try at these 3 examples. This time you're going to try and find 3 fractions equivalent to 2/3. Now I have given you the multipliers here so that we can all arrive at the same answers. You may want to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, let's see what you got then for that. So I'm going to start by multiplying my denominator by 4 in this case. 3 times 4 is 12. And I must do 2 times 4 to my numerator, which is 8. So 8/12 are the same as 2/3. Okay, here I've got my multiplier as 10. So 3 times 10 is 30. And 2 times 10 is 20. So 20/30 are the same as 2/3. And finally, my multiplier in the last one is 5. So 3 times 5 is 15. And same with the numerator, multiplied by 5. 2 times 5 is 10. So 10/15 are the same as 2/3. Okay, now we're going to move on to simplifying fractions. Now this is where we are making fractions smaller. So it's the opposite. Instead of multiplying the numerator and the denominator, we divide by the same number this time. So in this example, I'm looking at simplifying the fraction 12/30ths. Okay, so here I've shown you 12/30ths, so I've got 12 shaded, 30 in total. Okay, now I'm thinking of a number that can be divided, okay, by the same number. So I know that 3 is in the 12 and 30 times table, so I can divide them both by 3. So 30 divided by 3 is 10, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. So a simplified fraction to 12/30ths is 4/10. Now I know that I can make that fraction even smaller. There is a number that goes into both 4 and 10, and that is 2. So 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now this is the lowest form for this fraction that I can go down to, because there isn't a number that goes into both 5 and 2 equally. So this is the simplest form I can have the fraction 12/30ths. Okay, let's have a look at some examples then. So for the first one, I've got 16/36. Okay, so in this first example, I've got 16/36. Now, I'm looking for a number that goes into both 16 and 36. Okay, so I'm going to write it down. 16/36. Okay, I know that 2 can go into both of these, so I'm going to divide the numerator and the denominator by 2. Okay, so 16 divided by 2 is 8. 36 divided by 2 is 18. I can make 8/18ths an even simpler fraction. I know that 2 goes into both 8 and 18. So let's have a look. Okay, so I'm going to divide by 2 this time. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. 18 divided by 2 is 9. Okay, 4/9 is the most simple form I can have this fraction in, because there isn't a number that goes into both 4 and 9 equally. So 4/9 is my simplified fraction here. Okay, having a look at the second example then, 15/35. Okay, I'm going to write it down. Right, straight away I know that 5 goes into both of these numbers. So my divisor here is going to be 5. So how many 5s are in 15? Well, there's 3. And how many 5s are in 35? There are 7. So 3/7 is my answer. And this is going to be the most simple form, because there isn't a number that goes into both 3 and 7. Okay, moving on then, 21/49. Okay, thinking about a number that goes into both of those. Well, I know that 7 goes into both of those numbers, so my divisor here is going to be 7. Okay, so there are 3 7s in 21, and there are 7 7s in 49. And 3/7 is the most simplest form for this fraction, because there isn't a number that goes into both of those. Okay, and finally 20/28. Okay, now I know that 4 goes into both of these, so my divisor here is going to be 4. So 20 divided by 4 is 5, and 28 divided by 4 is 7. So 5/7 is my simplest fraction here, because again, there isn't a number that goes into both 5 and 7 equally. Okay, here are some examples for you to try, and I want you to see if you can simplify these fractions into their simplest form. You may wish to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, let's see what you got then. So, 4/8. Okay, hopefully you recognised that both of those numbers, the numerator and the denominator, can be divided by 2 equally. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And hopefully you identified that the fraction 2/4 can be simplified even more than that. And both of these can be divided by 2 again equally. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. So the simplest form of 4/8 is a half. Okay, moving on to B then, 6/9. Okay, hopefully you recognised that 3 goes into both of those numbers equally. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. And 9 divided by 3 is 3. So 2/3 is the most simple form of this fraction. 12/16 then. Okay, now I know that 4 can go into both the numerator and the denominator here. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. And 16 divided by 4 is 4. Okay, now 3/4 is the most simple form of this fraction. Okay, D, 24/36 then. Okay, now this is a bit more tricky, this one, because it's a higher numbered fraction, but hopefully you recognised that 6 goes into both of these numbers equally. So you can divide it by 6. So 24 divided by 6 is 4. And 36 divided by 6 is 6. And we can simplify this even more as well. And I know that both of these numbers are divisible by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. So 2/3 is the most simple form of this fraction here. Okay, it may also be worth mentioning that if you do have any more steps, so for example in C, if you divided your first one, 12/16 by 2, then you would have got 6/8, okay? And then if you then divided that again by 2, you would arrive at 3/4, which is absolutely fine as well. Just got a little challenge for you. So this challenge says a cake is cut into equal pieces. Emma gets 2/4, Hayley gets 6/12. Hayley says that Emma has the most cake. Is Hayley right? Explain why. So have a think about equivalent fractions here. You may wish to pause the video now and have a think about that. Okay, let's have a look then at the answer. So Hayley is incorrect, so she's wrong, because 2/4 is actually the same, it's equivalent to 6/12. So 2/4, imagining that this was the cake, here's 2/4 and here is 6/12. And you can see the amount that's shaded in yellow and orange is actually the same.